All right, you know about fentanyl, right? You know about opioids, you know that they're bad. You probably don't know how bad. In the country, in 2016, we had just over 63,000 overdose deaths. Two-thirds of them were because of opioids that were laced with fentanyl. It is a scourge, the likes of which people who are in the addiction community, in the police community, they say they haven't seen anything like this ever. Not meth, not crack. And there are a lot of reasons for that, but that's a separate part of the conversation. The main question is, what are we going to do about it? This White House says they are aware and they're taking charge. Kellyanne Conway is not just a senior advisor to the president. She has been tasked with overseeing this. We know that there was an allocation in the budget about it now. We know that in this spending measure, we know that there was an allocation in the long-term budget. What is enough? What is going to be done? A worthy discussion. Kellyanne, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for having me, Christopher, and for really shining a light on what truly is the crisis next door. The president in New Hampshire on Monday rolled out his policy plan. He is attacking the opioid crisis and the drug demand crisis overall on three major fronts: prevention and education, treatment and recovery, and law enforcement and interdiction. The president is tackling all of those simultaneously, not sequentially, because we have to really fight this battle on three fronts. And the president himself has said that he wants a massive public-facing ad campaign where we are deploying facts and figures and messages to people, sometimes shocking the conscience and sometimes warming the heart with those stories of recovery and treatment access. As you've noted, the president's the Congress really met the president's request to have significant funding, new funding, for the opioid and drug demand crisis. $3 billion this fiscal year, $3 billion next fiscal year. A total of over $13 billion is the package that Secretary Azar has been mentioning. And with those funds, we plan to beef up the interdiction, disrupt the supply of illicit drugs coming into our country. 90% or so of our heroin comes through our southern border. And about 8 or 9 in 10 of new heroin users say that they started through prescription drugs. As you say, opioids is very tricky. It starts in your family medicine cabinet too often enough, and that little bottle bears a label that says the family doctor and the local pharmacy. But treatment's important, and this president is calling for lifting a 40-year ban on mental health facilities because now they're being used to treat people with addiction. And if you fill that 17th bed, you don't get Medicaid reimbursement. We have a long list of people waiting for treatment and empty beds. He doesn't want that to persist any longer. But the strides his administration have made are many. He's calling for a 1/3 reduction in prescribing. We are about 5% of the world's population, and we consume about 80% of its opioids. So it needs to stop, and we want to make sure that all Americans are read into this. People can go online today, Christopher, and go to crisisnextdoor.gov, and literally share their stories. Yesterday, we showed a story from Mitchell in Missouri. He shared his story since the president mentioned this website on Monday, and it's a very compelling story of a young man who is fighting back from his addiction. But he's talking about how he got started, what the gateways were, how to spot those signs, and what we can all do for each other. So thank you for helping us bring attention to it. If people don't know what fentanyl is, really educate yourselves. We're suffering from information underload. This is a synthetic opioid being manufactured outside of this country, being brought through our mails, through our southern border, which is part of why the president wants the wall. It's sitting in our sanctuary cities, and it's literally killing us. Fentanyl is 50 times the potency of heroin and 100 times the potency of morphine.
Well, look, first of all, good on you for taking the responsibility to head this up for the White House. This matters. It's an important thing. It's good to see the action being taken. Now, the debate to have and the testing to do here is how much and where. You know, because especially China being highlighted with the tariffs right now about intellectual property theft. True. They also make a ton of fentanyl that gets brought into this country, sometimes the right way, sometimes the wrong way. That's something that should be approached. But really, the pushback is going to be this.
The president has.
Yeah, but I mean, that could be done in a much more fulsome way. You want to be aggressive about something. That's something where you'd get probably all the American people behind you because this is killing us literally. So you're putting money into it. That's good. I know you heard this on the ground in New Hampshire because, as you know, we did a documentary up there. We highlighted their fight against this drug. They in West Virginia are being overwhelmed in a way a lot of other places aren't, and they are laboratories for the problem. We need to put a lot more money than you're putting in here right now. It's not even close. The death ratio is so much more than HIV and AIDS, yet the funding ratio in terms of addressing the problem is nowhere near close. You have only about 10% of the addicted population that has access and ability to fund treatment. If we did that with cancer or heart disease, we would have a plague on our hands of death. We have to do more, and more money has to get to the local communities. How do you do that?
Well, Christopher, we agree that more money has to get to the local communities. This is a federal, state, and local and community effort. This is the White House. He is the president. He is an engaging, captivating, edifying speaker at that podium, including in New Hampshire on Monday. So I think that with the president and the first lady bringing attention to this issue, it's going to go a long way toward just the basics of educating people and honestly putting the fear into some of our youth from not buying that street drug for $10, from not getting hooked in the first place, and yet recognizing so many people in this country already suffering from this disorder with these drugs and helping them. Now, I want to say something about the money. That is Congress's job to appropriate the money. This president declared a public health emergency. Congress has met the president's request, which was a historic request for new funding for opioids. No president, no administration has had anything close to this, ever had anything close to this. And we know it does take money. And it also takes lifting or changing these crazy rules that really prevent people from accessing and remaining in treatment. We also, in our opioids cabinet, we've involved the departments and agencies and the cabinet secretaries that you would expect, DHS, DOJ, VA, HHS. But we also have involved USDA. So they've put out guidance for rural America on opioids. We've also involved Department of Labor and HUD. Why?
Good.
Because we recognize that when people, if they're lucky enough to be in the drug course, they're lucky enough to get into treatment, and they're lucky enough to come out, it's still a small percentage of complete recovery. If they're fortunate enough, they come out, and the only thing familiar to them are the drugs.
That's right.
But this is a president who's also committed very passionately and with dollars to skills education, to workforce development, to connecting people with their corporal needs. We're talking to HUD and my colleague over there in terms of housing opportunities. So you've got to tackle this holistically.
There's a whole continuum of care. That's smart talk.
And we're not going to tackle it overnight. The numbers could get worse before they get better.
They're getting worse every day. It's something that has to be addressed. It hits in a lot of different ways. People become addicted for a lot of different reasons.
But on China and fentanyl, I wanted to just say this because it's incredibly important. And most outlets are not covering fentanyl today, so thank you. 20,000 deaths last year alone. So with fentanyl, the Department of Justice announced the first 2 indictments of Chinese nationals who were in fentanyl traffickers. They have also filed a statement of interest with the civil litigation that the states have put forward. I went to the press conference with Attorney General Sessions and Democratic and Republican state attorneys generals who are part of the. The president has directed them to take a look at the litigation, and also you see so many of these companies now, and so many of these states really, and the pharmaceutical companies saying, you know what, we support the first prescription being 7 days, not 30. And let me make clear to your viewers, this is not, we're talking about opioids. We're not talking about chronic pain sufferers.
That's right. Palliative care and
drugs.
Pain management is still real. A lot of people need it. Not everybody who takes pain management medicine is an addict. We understand that. There's a lot of stigma that goes on with this. This is what I was saying. I'm saying there's a place for tough talk. And if you want to go after the threat, go after the makers of these drugs. I think the tough talk about, hey, make a better choice with kids, that is a little bit misleading about how addiction happens. And the tough talk about, well, let's kill the drug kingpins, I know that appeals to the base, and harshness is often perceived as strength. But you are not going to punish your way out of this problem. You know that, right? You talk to experts, they'll say the death penalty is barely a deterrent on any level, let alone when it comes to addiction. And it's not about killing the drug kingpins. Nobody's going to defend the drug kingpins, but you're not going to punish your way out of the problem, no matter how good that sounds.
Well, you may think nobody's defending the drug kingpins. Some are, but very few have been punishing them. We have got a kingpin statute on the books for decades. And the Attorney
Supreme Court doesn't like it, though. It has a hard time with Eighth Amendment muster.
But the Attorney General 2 days ago put out guidance to all U.S. attorneys' offices. Again, you can pull it up. You can put it on the screen if you like, or your viewers can watch it. What the president is saying is, and he's absolutely right, that we don't have tough sentences because a lot of those minimum sentences go by the weight of the drug. And so
Right.
with fentanyl, literally you need about 2
Right.
milligrams
You
for
can
one
change
lethal
the
dose.
sentencing. I'm just saying the call was to kill them. And not only are you going to have a Supreme
He
Court
said
problem
many
there.
things. He said tougher sentences.
But
and
he said kill drug
on
dealers.
very
That's what caught
he's-
people's
No,
attention.
he did not say kill drug dealers. He said in very specific cases, the
He said
Department
kill
of Justice.
drug kingpins.
Christopher, there's a
That's what he said.
two-page. But hold on, there is a two. Well, good. There's a two-page.
not good. I don't think that gets you out of the
And you say
problem.
the base likes it. He didn't say it gets you out of the problem. He's actually tackling it on these 3 major fronts, and you know
True.
it. And
That
we have
matters.
a first lady who's taken this issue on. She's incredibly popular, and she's given such voice and visibility to neonatal
Good thing to
abstinence
do.
syndrome. We have 25 babies being born addicted
Good thing
every
to do.
day
It's
in
a
this
huge
country.
scourge. It's all over the
If
place. It
anybody
has to
wants
be
to
addressed.
volunteer their time, go for it in your communities. It's a great cause.
Let me ask you something. There's a lot of good work that needs to be done. There are a lot of big problems. There are distractions.
And it's a nonpartisan issue, Christopher. This legislation
There's
should
no
be passing
question. Listen,
unanimously.
I wish I did not know as much about this problem as
That's
I
right.
do. I wish I had lived
have
it the
been on
way
the front
I
lines.
have.
We
I
appreciate
get it.
it.
I get it. I get how real it is. It's good what you're doing. More has to be done, and the effort has to be very focused, and we have to talk the right talk. That's why I'm checking you on those points. Let me ask you something else, though. All of this work that needs to be done there is compromised by the drama that's going on in that place, whether it's the turnover and now these stories with these women that are coming out that are not, you know me, I'm not about getting into people's private affairs. That's not what I'm into. It's not a matter of public concern in my estimation. However, the way they're being handled are creating potential legal situations for a sitting president of the United States. How much of a distraction, how difficult is it to get the job done there with these looming legal questions surrounding these women and, of course, the political intrigue of all the shakeups you have there?
The answer you see every single day. This is a very active president. Look at everything that happened just this week. He's hardly retreating into a cocoon. He's the most active president, as I like to say, he's a man of action.
But he's spending a lot of time
Italian
about
talk.
this. That's the fight with Joe Biden.
No.
That's the tweets about this stuff.
No. Sorry, he doesn't spend much time on that. Joe Biden, like that woman who lost the election, whose name I don't say on your network anymore, they seem pretty obsessed.
Took you longer than I thought it would, by the way. I think I owe someone lunch.
No. Why do they keep mentioning him and his voters and the election? It's kind of
He could
weird
run for
at this
president of
point.
the United States, and the president brought him up. The president
It's
went
kind
after
of
Joe
odd.
Biden.
Well, excuse me. No. Vice President Biden went after him and talked about
Only one
violence.
is president, Kellyanne.
Hold
Only
on.
one is
Excuse me.
president.
But one was vice president for 8 years.
True.
And let's not talk about all the things that didn't get done. You and I just spent 10 minutes talking about a biggie. That man was vice president for 8 years. I respect his public service. I honor his public service. However, if people in that kind of position, a former vice president, a former secretary of state and twice failed presidential candidate, but also first lady of the country, they have considerable platforms. Why aren't they using them for more good? Where is her center for women and girls? Why isn't he talking about? Why doesn't he call me today and help on the drug crisis?
But don't take us down the road. I don't care what she's
Why is
doing.
he
She is
inciting
not in charge of keeping my
you guys
kids
cover
safe.
the 2016 elections. No.
You're
Things that no one thinks about is just how hard it is to be alone in that system. You're someone who
opioids for so many of the president's priorities, Christopher. This town was mocking the wall 2 years ago, and now they're funding it. That's Donald Trump.
That's Washington.
He is the most,
I don't know how the wall makes any more sense now than it did 2 years ago.
Look at what he did just
when
this
these
week.
guys made it up.
Just this week, he rolled out a two-page, everybody should read it, very specific, very significant drug policy. Then yesterday, he took action against China because the USTR released a report that said that we are losing innovation in the future and that there has been intellectual property theft. And so he's taken action on that instead of just talking about it.
Whether or not it's the right action, though, winds up becoming a basis for the scrutiny.
Of
course I want to talk about
the tax cuts.
Of course I want to talk about them.
4.5 million Americans have benefited directly from bonuses, from raises. That doesn't even scratch the surface of all the capital investment that they have committed to their communities here. So we're going to see the fruits of that tax cut for a long time.
A lot of companies like the fact that you gave them more money. What they do with that money, we will see.
You've seen what they've done with that money. People's paychecks are fatter.
We've seen what some have done with some of the money.
Over 400
and we know that
companies,
people are getting more money in their
4.5 million.
paychecks, but we also know that it's very unequally distributed. And that the top does a lot better than the middle class who were promised that this cut would be about them.
Some may call it crumbs. Other people look at it as real bread and real money. I have never said the word crumbs. And so
money matters to people. They just could have gotten more of it if the policy was directed toward them. But let's not get too far off point. I brought you on here because this initiative matters.
Too far off point, but go ahead.
But
it
I'm
does
just saying
matter.
the distribution.
It does matter, and it's great that Congress has met the call with funding. And let me just give a shout out to something.
Go ahead.
In
Let's end there.
January, the president was flanked by Republicans and Democrats from the House and the Senate in the Oval Office, steps away from here, signing into law something called the Interdict Act. Interdict was an acronym. Is an acronym that provided $9 million in additional funding for the Customs and Border Patrol for fentanyl handling analysis. Why is this important? It passed the House by about 412 to 3, passed the Senate almost unanimously. We can do this together. I hope the people who are constantly trying to throw logs in the path of this president in a town that is very used to statism and not used to disruption and progress, I hope that they will come together in that kind of bipartisan fashion in the future. There's a bunch of legislation that's working its way through Congress. You pass that, you're doing right by the people in your communities.
You guys are in power. The president should talk to his own party and find a way to get things done.
That's why the economy is humming. ISIS is on the run and almost all but gone. That's why we're more secure, we're more prosperous, and we're more accountable. But I can tell you, somebody who works here every single day, has been here since day one, that this president...
You're one of the few, my friend.
Well,
you're one of the few. You are a veritable unicorn in that White House right now.
Allow me to be an illustration as to why there's such a great benefit in serving, because we can all be dozens of other places for lots more money. We're here because we love the country and we believe in the agenda that prevailed, not the one that failed at the ballot box. And we are trying every single day the best we can, beginning with the president and the vice president, who actually were elected to something, to put that agenda forth. He's keeping his promises, and people should not be surprised, Christopher, when he keeps those promises. When he puts tariffs, but he shows an openness, he has carve-outs, he listens to the Congress, he listens to other experts. When he goes ahead and he has the most massive tax cut that your network said to the American people many times falsely, it can't pass, it won't pass, and if it does, it only benefits the wealthy and well-connected. The 4.5 million Americans who are getting $1,000 bonuses,
the wealthy
they
and the
don't feel
well-connected.
wealthy or well-connected. They're wealthier, their paychecks are fatter, but look at the stock market, look at the confidence numbers, look at the great achievements that's happened on behalf of people, the regulatory reform.
Every decision
ISIS is
should
all
be
but
looked
gone.
at. Every decision should be looked at in terms of its conceptual base and then its impact. We'll look at that. We'll see what happens with the tariffs. They don't like it on Wall Street right now when it comes to China, but we'll see how it goes. I got to let you go. I got to start the top of the next hour.
Thank you, Christopher.
Kellyanne,
and good luck on your new show as well.
I'll see you there as well. You're always welcome here to discuss.
Don't tell
what
the people at CNN you don't think those other issues are of public service.
Well, no, we know they are, but don't tell people that when we report things, it's not true, because it almost always is. Like
I didn't say that. I just said the tax cuts did. Right. The tax cuts did
I know,
pass,
but they're uneven. I got to go. We'll continue this discussion another time.
All year long. Thank you. Take care.
Be well.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Thanks.
Time for the top of the next hour. Good morning. Welcome to your new day. Allison is on assignment. The one and only E. Hill sitting next to me. President Trump shaking up his administration again, naming his third national security advisor in just 14 months. H.R. McMaster is out. We told you this was going to happen. It is not new. It was weeks in the making. That was denied by the White House. They said it was fake news. They were lying to you. It was real then, and it just happened today. Former UN Ambassador John Bolton is in. That could mean very real changes to how the White House deals with North Korea, Iran, and Russia.